Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel, and it's time for another check-in on the 500 book challenge. That's right, another 10 have met their end. And so we're going to count down books number 11 through 20 that I've completed, including 3 off of the 60 that I wanted to complete before the end of 2023. So let's get right into these. So the first one I finished was Second Foundation by Isaac Asimov. This was a reread for me. It had been probably a decade, maybe even more, since I read the Foundation trilogy. And so now I've revisited all 3 of them, and all 3 are going to have a permanent spot on my shelf. I used to have this, the nice leather-bound Barnes & Noble copy that had the 3 of them together, and I'd probably love to get that back again at some point in time. But until then, I've got all 3 in varying paperbacks, so really enjoyable. Too much to talk about to spoil things, because it is the 3rd book in a trilogy. Needless to say, I think my favorite is probably Foundation and Empire, the second of the 3, with the mule and that threat in the background. But this one was a really close second. Next, a book that I finished in a single day, because it's that fast of a read. Starcat World by Andre Norton and Dorothy Marjorie. So this is one of the books off of that 60 I wanted to read before the end of 2023. It's under 100 pages in length. It is written in very large font too. And this is essentially middle grade. Book 2 in a series. Didn't realize that at the time until I started going into it. But I figured, you know what? So what? Let's just read it, and it was fine. If I was 10, 12 years old, I probably would have absolutely loved this. Now, So the 3rd book. So this is book number 13. I finally finished the 2016 Riesling anthology. So this is an annual anthology that's put out. As you can see there, the best science fiction, fantasy, and horror poetry of 2015, selected by the Science Fiction Poetry Association. And this, unfortunately, is the volume that put me into a poetry slump. There are a couple of decent ones in here, but I run into the same problem I run into anytime I try to read more modern poetry, is so much of it's not poetry. It's trying to pass it off as being poetry, but there's no meter, there's no rhyme, there's no flow, there's no pattern. Why is it a poem? Call it what it is, flash fiction. It's not free verse. It's free crap. And while I loved the idea of fantasy and science fiction poetry, I don't know that I'm going to pick up any more of these. I'm coming to realize what I want out of poetry, and it's just not going to be found very easily in the newer poets. I'd love to find some that would prove me wrong. But by and large, it's just I ran the same problem with Tracy K. Smith. When I read that collection of science fiction Bowie-inspired collection, and I thought that would be a for sure hit, and it wasn't. Anyway, enough negativity. We'll save that for book number 15. But first we have 14. It's Death World. Oh my goodness, this is so much fun. Don't sleep on Harry Harrison as a great, enjoyable author. He is never going to enter into the conversation of best of authors in a genre. But he might be one of my favorite authors to pick up and read. Stainless Steel Rat really enjoyable. Death World, really enjoyable. Yeah, I think I might be a Harry Harrison fan, which it's a good thing. I've got several other Harry Harrison books right there on my shelf that I need to get around to. This is book number 2 off of that 60 I wanted to read by the end of 2023. Made all kinds of progress going in there. One I picked up at a library sale on a whim previously because I needed an extra book because they were buy one, get one. And because it was, science fiction and an author I hadn't read anything about and was curious about, The Human Front by Ken MacLeod. And this is the PM Press Outspoken Authors, so this is the 10th out of this. And it says on the back, he's one of the brightest and most progressive of Britain's hard science fiction stars who navigate exciting new futures to the delight of legions of fans around the world. His works combine cutting-edge scientific speculation, socialist and anarchist themes, and a deeply humanistic vision. Described by fans and adversaries alike as techno-utopian socialist, yeah, it didn't do a damn thing for me. That was a tough one to get through. But I got through it because I wanted to get to the end. But now we are, from this point on, just full of gush. I finally finished I, Claudius by Robert Graves. And, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. It's so enjoyable. It's so unlike anything else that I have on my shelf to read. And it was refreshing, while at the same time it was dense and slow moving. And I didn't mind. The only problem was going through the slow moving book, it slowed me down on other things. And so that's why I danced around this book for so long as I was going through it, because I was enjoying it, but I had to go slow. And this is one of those that I think as I dive deeper into ancient history, Roman history, I'll appreciate even more as I understand more about the personalities, the events, the reigns, the dynamics of what was going on at this time. But even without that, this is just a fantastic read. Next, we had one that I got through really, really fast. And again, much like the Starcat world, it was just fast-paced. Move right along. And that is Returning to Ray Bradbury, From the Dust Returned, a novel. And this is kind of almost a fix-up novel of sorts, because there are stories in here that I know I've read elsewhere, and that I enjoyed to pieces revisiting, and then some loose threads tying things together of a family that is made up of people that are a little unusual. A girl who can inhabit the minds of other people and forcibly take over. An uncle who has the ability to fly. And many, many more. Enjoyable read. As is everything Bradbury. Not anywhere close to the top of the Bradbury, but not anywhere close to the bottom either. This is a very, very solid Ray Bradbury entry. If you like Bradbury, you're going to love that. If you're new to Bradbury, there are other places I'd steer you towards first, but that's still not a bad one. It gave me vibes of the Halloween Tree, but I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed the Halloween Tree. Next we have Bernard Cornwell, Agincourt. This book solidifies my opinion 95% of the way there on Bernard Cornwell. I had read a lot of the Saxon Tales, which is Uhtred, son of Uhtred. I had read the first book last year of his King Arthur trilogy. I enjoyed that. I still need to get back to the other two. I've got them both on my shelf. I didn't even put them on my list. I didn't put this on my list. Why didn't I put this on the list? Anyway, Agincourt is one of two battles, historically, that I absolutely love. The other being the Battle of Hastings. And so when I saw this, I knew I had to pick it up and give it a read. And holy cow, I love it. I probably need to give Cornwell at least a book or two of his Sharps series, which is, I think, Napoleonic era, which I believe is also his biggest, longest running historical novel series. I need to give that a try before I can definitively say that, yes, he's one of my absolute favorite authors. But I'm going to go ahead and say that he's probably one of my absolute favorite authors. And this is damn good. It's very much worth a read. And so after hearing that, you might think that that's like the best book I'm going to be talking about. It might be the best with universal appeal. Yeah, that or Death World or Second Foundation are probably the ones with the biggest open appeal. But I think my favorite read out of this is number 19, Tristan, by Gottfried von Strasberg. I wanted to read this last year. I put it off. I finally read it this year. Phenomenal. This actually contains also Tristram of Thomas. So at a certain point in here, it ends with the original author, Gottfried, and it moves on to being continued, essentially in Tristram by another author. So I enjoyed the Tristan half significantly more than the Tristram. And there were a lot of elements, a lot of beats in the story that were very, very familiar to me. And that just comes from being versed decently well in Arthurian lore. But really, really enjoyable read. I had a hard time putting it down. And was an absolute delight to go through. So, Tony, if you're watching this, Tristan, seal of approval. I think you'll enjoy it too. And then last but not least, the one I finished yesterday to get me to 20. And I'm very excited about that. Those Idiots from Earth by Richard Wilson. This is one I've held up a couple of times that were on my TBR. And, the title does it. It makes you interested. And what I couldn't help but do in the last couple days as I was reading through the short stories in this is contrast this against an anthology of science fiction short stories that I'm reading, Dangerous Visions, and how much higher I would rate the stories in here than most of the stories in Dangerous Visions. This is a solid entry, far from my favorite read of the year. It's probably not going to make my top list, but very, very enjoyable. I'm very glad I read this. And if you happen to see a copy of it, it definitely has my seal of approval. You should pick it up. You'll enjoy the stories. In particular, the last one in here, which is the longest one, It's Cold Outside, was really, really well done. So there you go. 20 completed. 480 to go. Oh, and Tristan was the third book that was on my 60 to read by 2023. I'm working through one more of those I hope to have finished yet this year, Jirel of Jory. But other than that, my pace is probably going to slow just a little bit because I'm going to pick up something longer soon. Um, it's been just a series of circumstances that have allowed me to get extra reading time in. The ending of the time when I had 3 classes to teach, now I'm down to just 2, so I got some time back from that. Traveling to and from the Chicago area for work. I'm lucky enough that I'm not the one that has to do the driving, so I get to do some reading. And while I'm there at the hotel room, I mean, what else am I going to do in the evening but read? And then this week, my daughter's been, unfortunately, got influenza A, has been hospitalized, and so I've had a little bit of extra time bedside with her to get a little bit of reading in when she's snoozing and dozing off. And so I expect all of that to come to an end soon. I'm hoping she's coming home tomorrow, and that I'm also anticipating only, hopefully, one more trip out to Chicago for work stuff. And so once those are done, I'll be diving into a big chunker, probably the Tale of Genji. Because you'll notice a lot of those were shorter, smaller, to make it a little easier to read on the go. And that was very intentional, and that's why the books I'm reading right now still fall into that same mold. But soon I'll be breaking from that and slowing down with some of the bigger books on that 60 list to try to make some progress on some of those barriers that are going to be in the way. I don't want to get to the point where the last 5 on there are all 800 plus pages. Plus, I'm just excited to get to some of those. Anyway, I've gone on long enough. Thank you for stopping by. It's fun counting this down. I'm excited because Christmas is almost here. I know I'm going to get one book at least for Christmas. I don't know. I have a strong suspicion about a book that I'll be getting for Christmas. And that's going to be I won't even mention it because I don't want anybody to decide, well, you know what, I can't get this for him after all. But I have a strong suspicion that something was going to get picked up for me. And I'm excited for that. So, hope you're doing well. Hope you have a wonderful Christmas. I don't expect to have another video up until after that. So, have a Merry Christmas, BookTube. I'll talk to you later.